Hello and welcome to the Patty Pod, Season 3, Episode 7. We're coming to you from the home of John Czeban. Czeban like Ray-Ban, my friend John that I know from hockey. I got here a little bit late today because I experienced a somewhat unique New York experience, which is having to go to the bathroom in public, when you're somewhere in public and there's nowhere to go. So I was already running late. I've been to my friend John's a couple times, but I just didn't leave quite enough time, so I was kind of in a rush. I'm on the subway. I happen to run into a neighbor of mine from my building, and we get to talking, when all of a sudden it hits me. I really have to go to the bathroom. This is an appropriate story, actually, John, for the podcast, because I've told other poop-related stories in the past.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
right.
I talked about my time at the Newark airport, when I got into a toilet that had an errant flushing system. And I'll just give a brief recap. Patty heads, I think is what they're known. Regular, loyal Patty Pod listeners know the story. But as a vegetarian, sometimes I have to go, like, it's a toothpaste quality. Sorry, folks, if this is too TMI, but this is the Patty Pod. This is what we do. So I sometimes have to wipe a number of times, and each time I have to sit up, and I wanted to flush so that I don't clog the toilet. Well, this toilet was spraying toilet water at me, and so I had to angle myself away, and there was a small pool of water that it was collecting on the floor, and my pants that were pulled down around my ankles were inching steadily closer. And I just told the listeners before that had my pants actually hit that pool of water, that I might have started crying and just gone home and just skipped the flight altogether. So in any case, back to the scatological theme, I guess, that had come up before. I'm on the subway, and all of a sudden I have to go, and it's because I drank a little bit of caffeine this morning, which I normally don't do. But like John said, everyone's been here at some point in your life. I get off the train. I'm desperate to find a Starbucks or a McDonald's or something. There's absolutely nothing around. Nothing around. Everything's closed. I've got 8 blocks to get to my friend's house, and this caffeine is hitting me so hard. And I don't know if it's my age or what, but I literally thought I was going to poop my pants. I was looking around for a parking lot.
You know you're desperate when.
Yes. Looking for a parking lot because I thought it might be less offensive than the street corner. I literally prayed to God, please help me. And I turned a corner and I saw what looked like a daycare center with a lot of little kids and parents. So I rang the doorbell, they buzzed me in. I got to the counter and I told the woman, I'm sorry, I'm having an emergency. Can I use your bathroom? And she said yes, so thanks be to God.
Yeah.
I made it. So, well, that's actually maybe a good segue into our theme for today. Our theme for today is optimism. And the reason I'm talking to my friend John is because his optimism stood out to me. So I've had different themes from different people that have stood out to me. And as I mentioned to John before we started recording, I just like to sort of see how those things operate in those people's lives. So it's not necessarily that I think John's an expert on optimism or has thought even a lot about it, but I'm always curious when I see certain things about somebody, certain traits or certain themes to talk to them about it. So that's what we're going to do today. So I want to introduce my guest, John Czeban, pronounced like Ray-Ban.
Absolutely. John Czeban, you got it. Perfect.
John, so we met playing hockey here in Brooklyn. We're in your home. We're in the basement of your home in Park Slope, not too far from the rink where we play.
Yep.
And I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about... So I find you to be optimistic.
Okay.
And I think that we talked a little bit before about that, and I think you kind of agreed that you have that to yourself as well.
Yeah.
So let me just ask you, have you thought much about that before?
No.
Not at all.
And, I wouldn't say not at all. I'd say that, it just, sometimes it comes up and it's, I guess the person you could say that, both two people, but certainly one person in life will always kind of love you unconditionally outside of a dog, right? But your mom, right?
Uh-huh.
And so my mom would sometimes say to me, yeah, John, you just have that, because, people, you're optimistic. And so she said it, but I mean, that it's not something I think about a lot, that's for sure.
So your mom has mentioned it to you.
Yeah.
But you haven't heard other like friends mention it to you, or maybe teachers when you were growing up, or
I guess
coaches or colleagues, or
so I've had some work colleagues, right? And now that you mentioned that, I think back. I mean, people that I've worked with over the years, and recently, some people they're like, yeah, you're like no, there's this woman I work with, and I remember she said that to me last year. She said, "You're always so positive," and she's like, because she was like, "What's wrong with you today? You're always so positive." And I was not in a good mood, and so that's how that came up at that time. So I have had it every once in a while, yeah.
Yeah, and just tell us, you're involved in technology sales, correct?
Yes, technology sales. Yep. Been in telecommunications industry since when I went to engineering school, did mechanical engineering.
Okay.
Ended up one summer working for a telecommunications company, makes telecommunications infrastructure. It's called Northern Telecom, Canadian company. And then I continued working with them and continued in the industry. And I was working in, the engineering side of the house for the first 6 years, came to New York City that way. And it was at 1998. And it was supposed to be a 9-month assignment. And my wife, Leslie, we really wanted to stay. So we moved our whole apartment with us. We got it unfurnished, brought our furniture, decided to stay. And, 10 months later, the guy who's running sales says like, hey, don't go back to Canada. Like, stay here and work for me. And he wanted me to be a salesperson on his team. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. Like, I'm an engineer. Like, that point, sales was like, I viewed it as sort of the used car salesman type thing, a little bit, could be slimier. They're really going to be honest and truthful. And I made the move into the sales side of the house, and it's been fabulous. And I think that's one of the, ways I've learned a lot, right? Because you just start to interact with so many more people. You're meeting so many more people, and what it became at that point is, and this I'd learned earlier after coming out of university, is, if you're going to be good in sales, you need to be a good listener. And so, I don't know if you remember, but some of the folks would remember. Do you remember Stephen Covey was like huge in the 90s? Did you ever hear that? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
Yes, I've read it.
So I think it's the 4th habit, if I remember correctly, right? Seek first to understand, then be understood. I often think of that, right? And so where was I going with all this? I guess just, as I went into the sales environment, and talking to these people all the time, gauging with customers, and a lot of them in the industry. It's a fortunate industry where most of the people have they've had to gone on to college or work in college, and so they're, and not that you have to be, but they're what that made them educated, right? So there's a lot of good people you're working with in general. Most of them are very interesting. There's hardly ever where I come across customers that I don't like. And I guess I genuinely like working with people. I like spending time with people. I like having conversations. I like to learn about them. And so, I don't know. And, being when I'm in those environments, that just gives me, certain things give people energy. And that's one of the things that gives me energy. I really enjoy it. And I guess that helps with the positive outlook, right? It's like, all right, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to be talking to these people. And genuinely, I like most of the people. And it's, I've been fortunate that way.
So, I will just make a sidebar comment about you are quite the listener. I just went on a monologue about my youth hockey career before we started recording for about 10 minutes straight, and you didn't interrupt me at all. And I know you're a hockey fan, but listening to someone else's tales of their 13 and 14-year-old hockey life is not something many people give me a long listen to. So, yes, you're a great listener.
Well, but I'm going to interrupt you there.
Sure.
Which is what I'll say there is that, but I learned a lot. In that about you as a person, right? Yeah. And so, the type of perseverance that you had for the goal that you were setting, and, the folks, the listeners that know you well, right, understand, you're, from the time we've known each other, you get to be meticulous, you're planning things, you're going after things. And so the story just came a little more insight into you, right?
Interesting.
And, yeah.
So you have obviously this interest in people, which is why my story was interesting to you, which I understand too, which is why I'm doing this podcast.
Right.
I have a great interest in people's lives and how things operate in their lives. would love to be somebody else for a day. That's this fantasy I've had.
Interesting.
It's a funny thing because it's like, you know, I don't even know. It's hard to even conceive of because how much of you would still be in there if you were somebody else,
right?
You know, observing. Because that's part of being you. Is that part of you observing?
Yep.
So but you know, setting that aside, like, how do other people have these thoughts that I have? Do other people have these feelings when they have these thoughts that I have? Are their feelings vastly different when they, you know, see something that I see or something similar to what I see? Or, I mean, clearly there are differences because we see different people react differently to different situations. But, you know, if you could really be inside their body and be them for a minute, I think it would be, I would give so much to be able to do that because and that's part, I guess, my curiosity is, how is it for other people, which you share, which you knew about yourself, I guess, but this brings me back to optimism. I mean, I worked with software engineers for 10, 11 years, and then I worked, my role was to sit between the software engineers and other stakeholders, sometimes salespeople.
Yep.
And I know those worlds are quite different. Those personalities are quite different.
Absolutely.
And so you made a major kind of leap of faith, I would say, going from, you know, this one side to the other. So you must have had some kind of optimism about doing that. Did it feel like a major leap to you, or did it feel like, I'm just going to try something new?
So it felt like a leap. There was a lot of nervousness. A little funny sidebar to it at the time. So, you know, I was big into, grew up in the grunge era, right? You know, so went full on in, had the long hair, had the goatee, right? I had the goatee from when I could probably almost early grow it. And so
you're talking like 14 or something?
Not even, maybe more 89. Right? I had like very like peach fuzz for a while. So it took me a little while to get there. But so I had this goatee and then, and this long hair. And then I had an interview and, I said, well, I got to clean up a little bit for this interview because they were bringing me in. I had to like go to this interview. And so I shaved the goatee. And my wife was my girlfriend at the time. And I showed up and we'd been dating for a few months. And she saw me, she's like, oh my God, like, who are you? Right. And so I quickly was planning, I did grow it back. And so I've had it ever since. And, oh my God, I lost my train of thought of where was I going with it.
So I was talking about was it a big jump for you to go from
yes.
that?
So for the sales side, and I'll get off this. So
no, it's fine.
The guy said to me, who wanted me to come into sales, he tapped says, there's one thing though, Johnny. And he said, his boss was he was like like George Steinbrenner.
Okay.
If you were joining his team, right? The Yankees, what's the Yankees rules, right?
Yeah.
No facial hair.
Cut your hair.
He's like, you got
no facial hair.
And I had my hair trimmed then, but at that point. But he said, you got to shave your goatee.
Wow.
And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah.
Right? You know, and I'm like going, and that was one of the things that made me not sure I was going to go join sales.
Yeah.
And so I didn't. I went down I joined the team though. I went down to the sales meeting.
You didn't shave the goatee?
Not initially. I did not. I never did. But I went down to this meeting.
Yeah.
And this guy's name was it was James, but he went by Jimmy. And so Jimmy, and he comes over to me that night. It was a team planning. He got all the team together to plan for the year, second half of the year. And I remember this. We were in Asheville, North Carolina, and he comes up to me at the bar and he says, "Hey John, yeah, welcome to the team. And everything like." He says, "Yeah, is everything good?" I said, "Yeah, I'm liking it all so far." Yeah, she says, "Yeah, just one thing." He's like, and he just goes like this, like, and he draws a circle around the bottom of his chin, implying that I got to shave it. And there was this woman, this saleswoman next to him, and she goes, "Jimmy, leave him alone. It looks awesome on him. Don't bug him. Like, you can't be doing that to him. Just leave him alone."
Interesting.
And so I kept it ever since after that. But anyway, that was a side story. Why I decided to go into sales, it was kind of serendipitous. It was two reasons. One, I felt I could do a good job at it. People had said to me that, that I was good with people and that I could be good in that role. Because I'd been working with salespeople. As I joined the industry, I'd moved closer and closer to working with the end customers and being in a customer facing role. And so this was then the ultimate side of it, moving over. And the other one was that it gave us a chance to stay in New York City.
Oh, okay.
And so that was the other reason. But it was, it's been great though. I mean, I've never regretted it at all. It's been just, I continue to be a great career, great industry. I just have so much fun. I
wonder if the goatee was somewhat emblematic of maybe the feeling that you were going like being inauthentic. You were worried that sales
Totally.
was inauthentic. Slime. There was some sliminess.
Yep.
And maybe it represented something to you about staying authentic.
Totally. I think you hit it right on the head. That was absolutely part of it. I'm like, this is me.
Yeah.
Right. And I know if I'm shaving this off, I'm not being true to myself.
Yeah.
This is who I want to be.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't want to have to be your person.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that, because now if I think back, and it's like, as I went into it, and I, of course, like anybody, you meet many people throughout your life, right? As a child, right? Coaches, teachers, mentors, right? Maybe friends of your parents. In this case, in career, mentors and people. And I met a lot of them, and they taught me how to be, a good salesperson. And, what you learn is what I've talked about before, is that, you can, I did my sales way of being genuine, the listener, and transparency, right? I'm like, I'm going to be transparent with you. I'm not going to sell you a bill of goods. I'm not going to tell you something's there. It's not going to be there. And because my thought was, that's how I want to be treated. So I just went, I'm going to treat people the way I want to be treated. And that was my approach.
It's interesting because it was such a change that you were like almost defying a direct order.
Yeah.
Because you're worried about your authenticity. But it was in some part of your mind, it was such a big change that you needed to defy a direct order to do it. Yet you still did it, which again, I think shows that you had this optimism about making these. I mean, there's a lot of people making these big moves. There's a lot of people who won't do that. And it brings me up with this other kind of business self-help book called Who Moved My Cheese, which actually students at my school read this year. I read too, and that's like something that I think I need to reflect on, because I can get real stuck in my ways sometimes, I think. Life has forced me not to, but I think I am kind of the type, because I just like, I understand wanting to just have things settled so that I can have fun, because I have such a side of me that likes to have fun.
Yeah. And
I can when I feel like things are settled. But, of course that can be a problem, and when in a world that's changing, like you need to change with it. And you've had this optimism. You said your mom talked about it, some of your colleagues talked about it. I'm curious about your childhood. So you grew up in a smaller town outside of Toronto?
How big was it? I mean, it's huge now. Well, relative to where it was. No, it wasn't. I mean, I guess people probably define small town as under 20,000. I'm probably like 50, 60, maybe even 80,000 people when we moved there. It was called Brampton.
Brampton. Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, now it's like 500-something thousand.
Is it?
Yeah.
So it was like 80,000 when you were a kid growing up.
I think so.
Not a suburb of Toronto.
I mean,
a distinct town.
A distinct town, own mayor, everything. Yeah, fire
did
department.
People commute to work in Toronto that lived there? Or
absolutely.
Not? Oh, they did. So it had kind of a suburban feel.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's a total suburban town.
Total suburban.
Yeah, total suburban town. Yeah.
So you grew up in a middle class family kind of thing,
mm-hmm.
and you were one of 4 children.
4 children.
Firstborn. And I think you said to me one time that you didn't play a lot of sports growing up, right? On teams?
The only ones I did is, it's funny, people, because being Canadian, right, everyone's like, oh, you played hockey.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I played a shitload of street hockey.
Yeah.
But I didn't play any organized ice hockey.
Yeah.
And what to my memory, and my parents weren't sure if this is true or not, but they're like, well, we asked you when you were 4 and you didn't want to, right? And I was a pretty shy kid back then. I was pretty quiet, and so I wouldn't go do a lot of things. I went, and I didn't have, I guess, the aggressiveness in sports. And so I went and played t-ball, and it was okay, did that, then did that. And then I joined soccer later on, played some soccer. But the sport that I guess, as I got older, that I loved is I was gonna play when I got to high school. But the year before, I actually joined, they had a recreational football league. And so I joined and played football when I was 13 years old and played tackle football back then. And that was sort of, and then the soccer team I'd done for the 3 years before playing soccer, and I enjoyed that. Yeah.
So you play, so I'm kind of like, because I always put myself in the shoes of the listener. And I'm sure some of them are wondering, okay, well, and I'm sort of wondering, where does this optimism come from? I mean, was it, would you say a privileged upbringing? Was there a lot of opportunity for a lot of different activities, or was it more of a humble upbringing where you kind of just took whatever you could get?
No. I'd say we definitely had, we did. So there were, of being a family of six, it was, I would say it's more on the side that, there was things available to you to be able to, more than not, right?
Mm-hmm.
We weren't a family that, jetted off to places, I mean, but, then my parents wanted us to have, at least like they created times for certain vacations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was one, and I being the eldest, I remember it the clearest out of the six of us, outside of my parents.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided in 1984 to, because most of the summers we would spend around the house, right? Hanging out, playing with your friends, right? We were fortunate. We had a pool, so that can help define. You had a pool then, right? And not everybody had a pool, so we had the pool. So a lot of people would come over with a friend, and we'd sit by the pool and that before we were old enough to start getting jobs. But in 1984, my mom told my dad we're doing something, and so my grandfather had a motorhome he'd bought and fixed up, and so we took that motorhome. And those that remember, 1984 was the summer a movie came out with Chevy Chase in it. It was called Vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And so
National Lampoon's Vacation.
National Lampoon's
Where they
Vacation.
go to Wally World.
So our plan, and my dad worked a lot. He would work through the week. He'd be home later in the evening, 7 o'clock or so. He'd go in on Saturday mornings till around 2 or so.
Oh,
so it was a
what
lot
kind
of
of work did he do?
He worked. He and my uncle. They worked at outdoor power equipment manufacturing. So they made lawnmowers and snowblowers.
Why were they working so much? They own the company?
They owned it at the time, and they ended up selling it in the 80s.
Okay.
And so yeah, they were the guys they had.
Small business owners.
Yep.
Yeah.
So she said, "You're taking time off." So she was a teacher, took 5.5 weeks off, and he was the only one that drove it. And we drove from Toronto essentially through Ontario all the way to Vancouver. Went to Vancouver Island. We drove down to Los Angeles.
Wow.
Back across the country to Toronto in 5.5 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was a core memory for you, it sounds like.
Core memory, yeah, because it was such a trip and everything. And it's back to your thing about optimism. I guess it's sort of, I was a kid that was generally happy.
Yeah.
Right?
So it sounds like, just from what you... Well, keep going. Sorry.
No, but generally happy. And, but like I was pretty quiet, right? And, I would not say I was in the popular crowd at school.
Okay.
Definitely not until it just sort of, came together, I guess, in high school. Sort of weirdly enough, in Ontario at the time, they had a grade 13. So it was in really like grade 12 and 13 that it started to kind of happen. And then, not that I wasn't positive, but I guess that, I just became, more confident of myself.
Did you?
And part of it was that I was the opposite of what's his name? It does the Outliers and Malcolm
Gladwell, yeah.
And I was a November baby, right?
Okay.
And the cutoff for ours was like December 31st. I was always one of the youngest in the class, which made me one of the smallest people.
Yeah.
So when I went to high school, I was like 5'2".
Yeah.
And that was it was hard to be 5'2" when you were in high school.
And
right?
I'm sure, I think his work demonstrated that whoever's at the older end of the class usually does better academically from a young age. So in kindergarten, you're going to be like looking like a smarter quote unquote kid.
Right.
So maybe you weren't like off the charts in school either. Plus you're not the height. That's why people start their kids, later at school. Cause it's not just the height, the physical things,
right,
which matter a lot to a kid.
It's the emotional thing that starts happening earlier.
Yeah, and you're getting better marks in class because you're, essentially a year older than the rest of the kids. At 5, that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
If you're 5 and everyone else is basically 4, or if you're almost 6 and everyone is basically 5, it's very likely you're going to be doing better in your academics, and that's going to be, it's another source of pride for a little kid. So Malcolm Gladwell's research was... It was, he highlighted some academics that had found this out, and like the reason he included it was because it was it had such wide application.
Yeah, it's I don't know, I certainly felt that and lived it, and I was not so I wasn't a kid that was depressed or angry. I was generally comfortable and kind to people, but I'd say that as I started to hit high school, I guess it was even in grade 9, right? I mentioned I loved football, and I went out for the high school football team. So you can imagine, how much that being 5'2", right? There's and they had a JV and a varsity team, right? So this was the JV team, and tried out, but there were so many kids that wanted to play on the team. It came down to they didn't have enough jerseys. They only had so many jerseys, so they had one jersey left, and so there were 4 of us, and they had this competition.
Wow.
Against each other, where they'd put us through a series of drills and exercises, and then the coaches decided which one of you were going to get the jersey. And so I got the jersey, and that was just like that was a big deal in my life, actually. And
as a smaller guy, especially in that sport.
Yeah, so I don't know, that was a thing, and then just being on the team like that. It's funny as I'm talking to you about it, and you mentioning about teams, like being on the high school football team. And going out, and they'd have pep rallies, right? And you come out in your jerseys and stuff. Yeah. And you feel good, right? Your confidence starts.
Absolutely.
So,
but it's interesting to me because what you've described to me is that it sounds like you were kind of middle class.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Maybe a slightly upper with the pool.
Yeah.
As a kid, that matters. You're like the house that has the pool, like the house that has the new cars, right, or whatever.
Yep.
So you as much as that doesn't matter to other adults as we get older and get perspective, as a kid, those little things matter.
For sure.
But anyway, you're basically middle class. You're in a middle class suburb of Toronto. You're you're not like a sports star as a kid.
Nope.
You weren't like a super school star. It sounds like you did okay in school, but you were a
decent student. Yeah, but I was not like the
you're
top.
not being celebrated by the teachers every week or anything like that.
No, wasn't on the valedictorian list. So.
Yeah, you're you're the firstborn in your family.
Yeah,
but you said you're not super aggressive as a kid, so you're not like dying to be the hockey star or like really like want to be the best at baseball. Like if you've been around kids like I have and you have, you see those kids, right?
Oh yeah.
Like almost every team has one kid at least who is clearly the best and like gets a real kick out of it. Like I was just watching my nephew play basketball last week, and there was one kid on his team who was like leading the charge the whole way, because you could see he was just real motivated by winning, by scoring.
Yep.
And plenty of other kids who weren't so. A lot of kids in the middle. Mm-hmm. And a couple kids that didn't seem to care really one way or the other, which I know you've coached before and seen that.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, it's interesting to me because, and I'll get your take. So I sort of ask these questions because I can imagine somebody being like, yeah, you're rich. Then that can make you optimistic if you grew up rich, or you grew up with all this talent. I have this friend that I interviewed last week who just has this like outsized musical talent, and has kind of always had it as a kid. Mm-hmm. And or people might think that it's you're firstborn, and so you like just real take charge all the time and trying to be whatever, stand out in some other way, like socially stand out. And it didn't sound like necessarily you have any of these external factors that give you this optimism.
No, and I think that it's so interesting. You look at my if I look at my folks, right, and one of the things my mom would always say, is because as I was starting on my business career, and certainly as I went into professional life after graduating university, and she'd be like, "Don't be like your dad," right? And she's right. I mean, I take after her in terms of the social aspects, right? Being comfortable chatting with people and everything. And my dad's more introverted and doesn't want to do, as he said, I don't want to do that shit, John. Yeah, and he would not. And she's like, so she would say that, and she'd see throughout the years, said, work on that, right? Don't lose that. Keep that, right? And mm-hmm. she'd be like, be nice to people, right? Mm-hmm. Treat people like you want to be treated, mm-hmm. right? Don't treat them like your father treats them, right? Stuff like this. So, but certainly, I mean, being the eldest, there was definitely, a level of responsibility that comes, right? I mean, as soon as I was 13, it was like, all right, we can leave the kids at home for, dad's gonna be home late. John, you got control of the household, right? Yeah. Until we come home.
And I think you told me once didn't you have a job at a pretty young age?
Yeah. Well, see, so here's not fortunate for me, right? So, my dad, working in him and my uncle having this, they had a not huge, but a manufacturer, they made the stuff right in Brampton. The plant was right there. Okay. So they're making these lawnmowers and snowblowers. Yeah. And so it was the summer of 12 or 13, I think I was when I was, and So you see, we went in and he gave us we had a job, right? And the job was, they had a parts department, and the parts department was, people need something that broke on one of their lawnmowers, snowblowers, and they send in and you package them up and send them out.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave us one, and people that have worked, being from Duluth, you probably know snowblowers,
sure,
right? And do you know what a shear bolt is?
No.
So shear bolt's a bolt that's in the auger, right? So if you hit something, it shears so that you don't, destroy your whole drive shaft system and everything into the motor and stuff like that. So it shears off.
Okay.
And so, if you run into something like, I don't know, who knows, if it's a log or something.
Yeah,
like that.
sure, a rock.
Yeah. And so anyway, it's a bolt with 2 washers and a nut.
Okay.
And they go through a lot of shear bolts there.
Sure.
And so the job was, for the first 2 weeks, you go in, you sit there, and you just make shear bolts. So you take a bolt, throw 2 washers on, put a nut on, put it in the thing.
Just repetitive
all day long.
Yeah.
I quickly learned some things about what you don't want to do in life. I could learn from them. And that was part of the reason why he did that. He's like, come on in here, work here. Like, learn about this, what you might do, might not want to do.
It's funny. My dad and uncle were business partners, and they owned essentially a sign company, a painting company that did commercial painting, and then this outdoor advertising business that was like billboards and those blue signs on the highways.
Yeah.
I think I was maybe telling you. Anyway, the painting business did, one of the jobs that they had annually was to paint various college dorm rooms.
Okay.
So when I was 17, I was 18, the year after I graduated high school, I learned that I could work for my dad's company. The union allowed relatives of the owners to work that were I was non-union, but I could work because I was a son of the owner, and I could make like double what all my buddies were making working at the golf course or whatever. So I said, yeah, for sure, let's do it. So my first job was to go into these dorm rooms in Superior, Wisconsin, at the University of Wisconsin Superior, UWS. Go Yellow Jackets. And I took a paint scraper, like you'd see a little 2.5-inch paint scraper handheld deal.
Yeah.
And we duct tape them to these like wooden rods.
Yeah.
And then I'd scrape textured ceilings all day long.
Oh.
All 8 hours above your head.
Like the stippling
that
stuff?
popcorn ceiling.
Yeah.
The bumpy ceiling that for some reason became popular in the 80s or 90s.
Yep.
It would be sprayed on. That's how they get that on there. And for whatever reason, this university wanted them scraped off. I don't know if they're going to reapply or just they were done with that look. It was looking dated or something. So that was my job. And like with a tool that wasn't really meant for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was just like hard, really physically hard and super boring.
Oh.
And it was just me in a room, just like I hated it. And I had to do it every day for 8 hours a day. And yeah, I had that same memory of like, there's no way this can be my life. I have to get an education. Anyway, that's a bit of a sidebar. But even that, so you're 13 or 14 and you have this job?
13. Actually, first job was the summer before.
13, or summer before that? You were 12?
Yeah, I was 12. And so my grandfather and my grandmother on my father's side, who they had... So I was first generation Canadian because my dad and his family, they'd come from Hungary, escaped during the Russian Revolution.
Oh, wow.
Paid for someone to get them to the border, came as,
Wow.
lived in the school on straw as they made their way to Canada. So he had opened up gas stations and stuff. First he just started as a janitor in a hospital, eventually had his own business, and then decided to semi-retire to Northern Ontario. So part of the story he ended up, what he was going to do was farm.
This is your dad?
My dad's father.
Or your grandfather?
My grandfather.
Okay.
And so he was going to farm. So he had he got a farm up there, land very cheap up there, right? I mean, it's very like the town was called Restoule, and it exists because there's a bunch of lakes there, and there's a provincial park, and there's 200 people. And so he had about 80 head of cattle or so. A few of them were Holstein stuff that he'd milk and that. And then when they first started, they also had pigs and chickens and everything. Point though is that he needed people. He would also have all his own hay, right? So he'd grow the hay, cut it, bale it, and there was no round. It was all the rectangular bales back then, and hire the local guys to collect it for him. Well, instead of paying a local tractor guy $3.50 to drive the tractor, right? He got me and my cousin to stay. We stayed there the summer, and we drove the tractors. And these guys instead paid them the money to throw the hay onto the wagon. and we would just drive the tractors. And at the end of the summer,
amazing.
I got my first paycheck.
Yeah.
$25.
$25 for the whole summer.
For the whole summer.
Holy shit! Were you disappointed?
I was ecstatic.
Because that was a lot of money.
$25. Yeah, what is this? 1982.
82, but you're 12 years old.
Yeah.
You're 8 hours a day on this tractor.
Most of the day, yeah. Yeah, you're out early and everything.
I mean, so that's... I mean, when I was 12, I was playing wiffle ball all day. No joke. Like, I would go to my buddy's house. It's funny because I thought of this phrase earlier today. I would be at his house at 9:30 a.m.
Yep.
Like it was my job. I was not late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I was coming late today. I told the story at the top of the podcast. It's not the poopy pod. It's the patty pod. But
Right.
I do tell poopy stories every once. But anyway, and I was like, this is kind of like I don't want to be late. This sort of feels like my job, sort of. Anyway, and I just had that phrase. It's funny because I talk about synchronicities. I think these are ways that the universe tells us it's supporting us when we have these like moments of this.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, in any case, I used to, that's where I was at when I was 12. It was one of the happiest times of my life. I'd be there at like 9:30 because I wanted to play wiffle ball. And me and my buddy wanted to be together. And so we would like make a point of getting there, like in the morning. So we had all day.
Yeah.
And we would play indoor Nerf baseball while the Cubs were on WGN because he had cable. We had a little souvenir wood bat and a little Nerf ball, and we would play in his living room. If you hit it above the the curtain rod, it was a home run or whatever.
You're all like in rules, right?
Yeah, but it was my point is that it was baseball all day, and then we'd go outside and play wiffle ball all day, and then I'd go home for dinner, and sometimes I'd go back down to his house.
Yeah.
Or I'd have Little League practice after dinner, but sometimes I would go back to his house and we would just play video game baseball. So your 12-year-old experience is almost it's like Dickinsonian, like Charles Dickens, I mean, obviously you're not impoverished and working in some kind of a sweatshop
with
or
your
anything.
grandparents and, my grandmother's cooking like great Hungarian meals every day for us. So yeah, it was.
So your memories are warm of that time?
Oh, hugely so.
Yeah.
We would spend because there was 4 of us, right? And we're my dad's brother, the one that had they were in business together.
Yeah.
His son was born first, then it was me, and then the youngest, my dad's one of 4 as well. His youngest brother had a daughter, and then my parents had a daughter. And the 4 of us were all within like 2 years of each other. And so we would often go up. We'd spend tons of time up there. We'd spend, if not the whole summers, at least like a good part of the summers up there. When we had our March break, we'd go up there and spend the week up there. So there's a lot of times we would go up there. And so, you're just a kid, you're up there, it's freedom. And you're like and my grandparents would like, it's time in the summertime, especially, like he'd be like, all right, you guys get dirty. Like he'd run you down to the lake, right? There's a dock that the government had put in, and so it was called the government dock. So it was like, we're going to the government dock, right? And take the Bar of Irish Spring, right? And after the day of work, you go down to the dock, riding in the back of the pickup truck, right? The bed, and go for a swim in the river, right? With all the other guys that were out baling hay and everything like that. And come back, and that was the day. It's
so what's emerging to me is this idea that like when you talked about your 5.5 week road trip with your family, and then you talk about this time you spent with your grandparents, even though you were working. I mean, you were working a lot. You have these warm memories of that time.
Tons.
And I wonder if it's not the love of your family and your community growing up. And it sounds like when you were a kid, you were in the street playing street hockey with your buddies.
Constantly.
And I was doing the same kind of thing with my buddies. I think sometimes, I don't know if people think that I'm optimistic. I sometimes get the feedback that I have a positivity.
Yep.
And I'm kind of a roller coaster. Like in my internal life, it's kind of up and down. There's upsides to that for sure. Like I do get a lot from people. I'm very social, and I'm just kind of sensitive to moods and emotions, and so I think I want to create good moods and emotions. Yep. The downside can be I gotta be mindful of not being around too much craziness, and I have to make sure to take care of myself and eat and sleep and be around the right people and stuff like that. But it sounds to me like I just think from the outside people can say, well, optimism comes from some kind of privilege. It's very easy to say that. We're middle-class white guys, so
Right.
that's one thing that people might think.
For sure.
You know, and there has been, obviously, some privilege to being a middle-class white guy. Like, there's no denying that. But at the same time, you know, I do think whatever optimism I have comes a lot from that kind of similar, I had a similar like, middle-class community.
Supporting your parents.
Talking, supportive, loving parents, but also like, you know, it was, you know, people have talked about the good old days a lot, and you know, every generation thinks that their growing up was the good old days, and the current days are terrible, and I don't buy that. I mean, you hear, you know, the greatest generation used to think that, you know, Buddy Holly and Elvis especially were these satanic influences, and that the baby boomers were just this wreck of a generation because they had television and they had Elvis, you know. And then of course the baby boomers said the same thing about Gen X, like, oh, there's because of divorce. I remember hearing that divorce rates had gone up, that's why this generation is trash. And there was this movie Reality Bites that you probably remember that was supposed to be like the emblematic movie of Gen X, which painted them as a bunch of loser slackers, right? Yep. And then Gen X, of course, turns around and says the same thing about millennials. You know, I think more of it's like you encounter 20-year-olds in the workplace and they're kind of like in shock, or 23-year-olds, because they've never been in the workplace, and they do look like they can't take it and that they don't have a lot of discipline, and you know, like, but I think every generation, I think when they leave college, it's a pretty big change, and a lot of them have struggled with it.
I think it's a big change for them. I mean, it's, you know, it's funny you talk about Gen X. I saw something the other day, and it was like, you know, why Gen X always looks angry. I know you're a big music fan like I am, and so you'll appreciate this one. You may have seen it. It's like, you know, because they had to buy all their music on records, then they had to buy all their music on tapes, then they had to buy all their music on CDs, and then it was MP3s, and now we have to we have to pay for subscriptions to get our music.
No, but I think it's I just think that I had a similar experience where, again, yes, there was some privilege to what I had. I did have two supporting, loving parents. But I was talking to my dad the other day about things I miss from my childhood. I'm watching my nephews now play hockey growing up. And when I look back at it, there's literally like almost 1,000 people, or hundreds, if not thousands of people that I was connected to just by being in this game. And just by like the times where, you know, I had some connection almost to some parent of every one of my teammates, either the mom or the dad, if not both. You know, where they traveled with you every week. Yeah. And you got to know each other, and they were in the hotel with you after the games, and, you know, they were cheering for you, and so they would say nice things to you, and, you know, somebody would have a Super Bowl party, and it'd be a bunch of, you know, what do they call those pots that you plug in? You know, it'd be four.
Crock pot?
Yeah, there'd be 4 crock pots going. You know what I mean? And it was just like, those are the Johnsons, those are the Oswalds, those are the Jeanettes, those are the Cools. Yep. This kid's got an older brother that plays with my older brother. This one's got an uncle that played with my dad. This one's that. It was just like connection after connection after connection after connection. It was this web. And it was not about that we had all this money. Half the time we were in a basement or in a garage even in the summer. Like, there were a number of kids that I graduated high school with that had their grad party in their garage. You know, like, it wasn't fancy what I grew up with, you know, and it sounds like similar to you. Like, we're not impoverished by any means, but it wasn't about like, oh, we had so much money. We had so much community.
So much community.
And so much love. Yep. With the extended family. And I remember going to college with kids that didn't have that. And they were kind of more artsy. I really like started to hang out with a different crowd in college. And they didn't quite have that experience. Some of them had 2 supporting, loving parents. In fact, most of them did. But they didn't quite have that. I got the sense that they didn't quite have that kind of extended feeling. And they didn't, I think in part, didn't believe in themselves as much as I did. Now, I had real times of difficulty believing in myself. because once the hockey thing ended for me, I was in a real identity crisis. And so I tasted like what it feels like to not know if I'm good at anything and to doubt myself and all of that. So I think that's part of why I kind of can connect with those kids too. But yeah, no, I mean, my takeaway is that your optimism comes from partly just who you are, right? Some of it's inexplicable.
Right.
It's just a personality thing.
Yeah.
It's something you were born with, God-given. But some of it comes from more about the community and the community, the family.
Yep, the environment for sure. I think it's a big part of it. It is what you summarized there, Patrick. I mean, having loving parents, having family and community, and you mentioned all the people being around. The same thing. Like big community when we would get together with the families, right, on both sides. My mom's side, the smaller, but we'd always get together. As a point, it happened, multiple times throughout the year, right? Especially around the holidays, Christmas, and whatever.
Yeah.
And then my dad's side, bigger, right, more kids and everything, getting together but always got together. So there was this community of family and then community of friends that were around.
Yeah.
And through my dad, when he would work, I got to know a lot of the people that he worked with, right? And he would like have them over for like a pool party in the summer. Some of them, so you get to know these business people, right? And you'd be chatting with them, and that's kind of what triggered my interest in business. I mean, I remember, I was learning because when they were deciding, they were selling the company, and they sold it to this Canadian company. It was called Noma. That would make they were known in the industry for making Christmas trees and Christmas lights and stuff. But it was a public stock, and so. I'd had some birthday money, and I was like, oh, Dad, and can I, I was learning about the market, so I put some money into it. Not a lot. I think I think it was like $100 or something like that. But I think the stock was at like $12 or something. So, but if that then got me to like looking inside, the newspaper to see what it had happened, like where did the stock close the day before, or anything like that, and tracking that and reading articles in the newspaper around what was going on about that, or just in the industry. So. I don't know where I was going with that, but I mean, it's just...
Well, I think where you're going is that you learned you had an entree into this business world through a friend of your family.
Right.
And that, I know exactly what you mean. I've talked on this podcast a number of times about my friends' parents and my parents' friends and how they were part of this bigger web. Some of that was connected to sports and some of it wasn't.
Yeah.
But that was this like Duluth web, this womb that I grew up in. Mm-hmm. And you could get like, you're learning about business through a friend, your dad's friend or an uncle or something like that is an entirely different experience than logging onto YouTube for somebody right now trying to do it, or just getting a book as we would have in the old days,
Right.
Such a, like, there's just an ease. And there's a kind of trust, that they're telling you the truth, right? They got nothing to gain by bullshitting you, about how to play the stock market or how to like invest properly or how the business world works, right? They're trying to tell you what as best as they know the truth because they really want to help you because they're their nephew or they're they're their friend's kid, and I just I think that's it makes you feel like the world is a place where you can do things. Like, it's not intimidating anymore.
No.
Like, if
you're talking to real people that are out there doing it.
Right. It's so demystifying.
Yeah, which is that's an empowering thing. And, that goes to the privilege part of what we kind of talked about, right? I mean,
the privilege of community.
Privilege of community, but also, I guess, privilege to access, because not everybody has necessarily have access to some of those people, but...
That's true. And that is where these bigger identity issues come into play.
Yeah.
It is true. But I also, it's true. I shouldn't downplay that. I just think that gets a lot of attention in political discourse, especially.
Yeah.
And I think that you don't have to, like, for a lot of people, their path isn't business, and if they have community, maybe their path is the arts, or maybe their path is religion, or maybe their path is, something with, like, the caring professions, nursing, or, whatever, childcare or teaching or whatever. And, like, aunts and uncles can help with all that, too, right?
Sure, absolutely.
It's interesting. I mean, I know that there's also this, like, there is a difference in different communities about how like, robust those communities' webs are, and that has connections to historical things like racism and, like, colonialism.
Yep.
When when communities have been broken down systematically, of course, it's going to be hard to have them reemerge. But for me, I just think that I think as a species, if we can focus more on community and connection and maybe less on just money, as solving things.
Yeah.
And if it can be in kind of an organic way, if people can think to themselves, I'm going to do what I can to connect with other people, rather than, I'm not so interested in shaping policy. I know policy is important, and I know but my mind doesn't go there.
Right.
I think as important, though, if not more important, is this message that, people can do it organically, if people can do it at this grassroots level and truly just a casual way with their friends, and try to build friend networks and try to build relationships and keep the relationships they have as healthy as possible.
That's an important thing. The other thing I would say too is that, one of the things that I think about is that, and I don't know, but, I kind of, when I wake up, I'm like, look, I'm starting the days or whatever, and I'm like, it's, if I don't like something, it's up to me to change it.
Yeah.
Right. And whether it's from the past or just something that's there, but it's or a belief that I can't know where, but it's just, I'm the person that's going to be responsible for, and it's not everything, but what's going to happen to me today or where it's going to go. Right. And, I do believe that, you can, not all of it, because I know people that suffer from, hardcore depression. Right. But at least in terms of, you can take control of your environment and try to put, if you don't like your environment you're in, that it's not only up to you, because I've been in a privileged environment, so to say that it's hard, but I mean, you can decide your day, and if you don't like the environment, you can change it a little bit. I'm thinking more of a work environment when I'm talking through that a little bit, right? Because, you can sit there at your chair and say, I don't like this, I don't like my new boss, I don't like this environment or whatever, and you can work to make a change in that, right? So
your point being that there are some things that you can control. You can keep your side of the street clean, I think is what some recovery people say. You can't worry about the other side of the street, really, right. But you can tend your own garden.
And I guess the other one is that if you're going to sit there and wait for somebody else to do it for you, then that I don't know. I haven't done that, and so maybe I feel like maybe that's helped to deliver some of my optimism, maybe. Right?
Yeah, and seeing some results from it.
I think certainly that. Yeah, if you don't see results, it's probably going to be pretty tough.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a good place to end it. Thanks so much. It's been a great talk.
Yeah, it's been great, Patch. That's been fun. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
It's. I hope the audience also appreciates it.
Yeah.
We'll be back again. I'll continue to do these interviews with friends. I think talking to non-celebrities is another kind of a fun type of podcast. There's so many out there that are celebrity focused, but hey,
totally.
You could be a celebrity yourself sometime, John. We never know. All right. Thanks so much, John. And thanks everyone for listening. This was a long one, but I think a great one, and we'll see you next time.